And make sure that the players are situated, waiting for MiX to join the room. Whoever wins this gets to go on to the winners finals. Or rather, total finals. In the winners semifinals, MiX lost to Calavantes, so if he wins here, he'll be able to move on and challenge Calavantes one more time. One player is already set up, currently waiting for the other player to arrive. To review our two players, MiX has made it all the way through winners brackets up until this point. His team consisting of very aggressive characters: Zolt from Season 2, Ragna from Season 5, and Hakumen from Season 5. What we know of seeing MiX's previous gameplay, he enjoys playing pretty simple and very deadly characters. Mostly relies on his opponents making mistakes. Chykka, on the other hand, is probably the polar opposite of MiX. Chykka tends to play very defensive and reliable characters. This team consists of Equus from Season 2, Chun-Li from Season 3, and Treasure Knight from Season 4, a serious underdog character. Chykka so far has made his way through the tournament playing very safely, and, much like MiX, relying on his opponents to make certain mistakes. Interestingly, Chykka's team has a distinct weakness of being difficult to mount an offensive against aggressive opponents, of which MiX, being the type of person who plays aggressive characters and is a generally aggressive player in general, will happen to have an advantage here, assuming that he chooses to leverage it. Still waiting on MiX to give a heads up. Here's our second player has joined. We'll be moving over to Tabletop Simulator. I did have Tabletop Simulator captured. Oh, here we are. Wait a minute. What the heck? OBS is deciding to have some fun here. How do we get this to actually stick? What the? So if I have the menu open, Tabletop Simulator works fine. What the? Oh, I don't even know what to say about this. What world? Well, this is a first. Does Tabletop Simulator load fine? And what the heck? Oh, there we are. Alright, we're good. Beepers. Looks like both players are picking their first characters, and they are picking what seems to be their most common first choices across the tournament. Just zoom out to see the reference areas. Zol versus Chun-Li. Zol is a wonderful... What is the correct word to use for him? He is an entertaining character for at least one player. Possibly not the other player. He plays a very interesting game of solitaire. Zol primarily plays very safe cards, and with his character ability, he can make his normals even safer. Also allows him to have some very fun setups. Once he exceeds, which is very easy for him given that he is a 7th cross character and only has 5 gauge cost, mostly means he only needs to hit about 3 times during the course of a match. Post the street. Let me think about that. Oh, if people can't figure out where to find my link by now, that's their own problem. That's my opinion. Just copy link, paste link. Alright, we're good. Right, so Zolt's Exceed mode's very fun because he just gets to take multiple actions in a row. He has a lot of cards that give him advantage, and cards that give him more resources. And Succeed mode just allows him to throw about 3 attacks out every turn. Uninterruptible. Ooh, looks like the game has begun. MiX starting by preparing. Safe move with Zolt since he doesn't have to move to do a whole lot. Interesting, Ultra Parry being played this early. Should probably found something a little bit more energetic here. There we are. Ultra Parry, let's see here, nails 2 normals and reveals hand. Is probably the best result for it. Soul preparing to make up for the hand loss. Unfazed. Chun-Li starts this matchup, I believe, at a disadvantage. Chun-Li requires gauge. She needs enough gauge to enter her Exceed mode, and then more gauge to threaten her Ultras. Once she can get her Ultras threatened, she becomes basically unstoppable, thinking about it. The basic Ultra that she wants to land being Hosenka, which will generally hit for that 9, and will generally hit ignoring armor, making it basically impossible to avoid. The speed and range seem like an issue until you realize that Exceed Chun-Li can basically extend her range as far as she wants to. Zolt playing Defend. Interesting option, given that Chun-Li has fast attacks, but their speeds are only really comparable to Zolt's general speeds. Whether or not Zolt needs the safety or not, we will see. At range 4, Chun-Li's options are fairly limited. Boosting Swift Attack. The speed on Swift Attack usually isn't worth as much as the hit effect on it. A lot of Chun-Li's attacks have boosts that allow them to end up in the gauge. So a lot of Chun-Li's strategy mostly revolves around playing those boosts, getting them into gauge, then exceeding as soon as possible. Now, if the opponent doesn't do anything about this, it can easily be 3 gauge on the first strike of the turn. Turn off the overlays here. Zolt striking. This is a safe enough position to threaten most options. Chun-Li's speed at this range doesn't allow her to threaten too much, though Spinning Bird Kick will allow her to punish most attacks. We have Dive into Gunblaze, which isn't a huge win for Gunblaze, but it does allow Zolt to draw cards. Or In this case, he chooses to do extra damage. Curious situation at this point. Range 1 is not the greatest for Chun-Li in this matchup. But given that it is her turn, she can choose to strike here. And if nothing else, threaten a mix-up, which will happen. Zolt winning the mix-up. Interesting. Zolt has 2 hit effects here that he has to resolve. So we'll see what the end positioning looks like. Uses to ignore his character ability, pull Chun-Li into the corner, and then prepare. Chykka being cornered has fewer responses than usual. Now in this position, attacks like spinning bird kick and lightning legs actually become viable. It's mostly a matter of whether or not any boosts will come down, and whether or not Zolt will choose to play safe or greedy. Chykka passes turn. Now with one spike down, MiX's threats become less threatening, though there's very little that Chun-Li can do against him from this position. Performing a reading. Place the EX spike to reduce damage. And cross up is transformed. This is probably the most important transformation for Zolt, given that it allows him to effectively keep his hand size up. Zolt quickly burns through resources as soon as he turns into the Hunter of Men. Both players biding their time. MiX at this point only needs to play one safe attack to get enough gauge to turn into Hunter of Men. At which point the game is probably over. Though players choosing to play passively at this point leaves me with questions about their hand contents. Chun-Li has many options to get out of the corner. Unfortunately, her range 1 mix-up game is incredibly limited. Spinning bird kick will miss. And head stop still gets taken out by sweep. Chykka's other options to get out of the corner have been mostly exhausted. 2 ultras have been spent. 1 cross has been spent. 1 dive has been used as an attack. The other uncornering options have significant risk involved. Playing Faultless Focus. Interesting situation from this position. I want to say this is mostly being played in order to establish gauge. Both players reveal. Lightning Legs into Gunblaze. Interesting options. Gunblaze fully triggers. I believe he's dealing the full 5 damage. The player's exceeding. Not sure that Chun-Li's Exceed does much for her in this position, though. A boosted spinning bird kick is probably her best option from this position, given that it does get +1 range. That said, her best options for boosting with it, I believe, have been consumed. Harassment of Fatal Eye is a significant problem. Will he follow up the Fatal Eye? They cross to establish range. Interesting. Getting Whipcrack transformed gives Zol more breathing room. Spending advantage, a strike with +1 speed. Ooh, interesting call out. Laser Fervor will gain advantage, but it will also get itself stuffed by focus. MiX plays his own focus to draw a card and to add extra armor. Spends advantage to CC6. Strong option. This does give Chykka just enough breathing room to attempt to turn the game around. Strong play. Plays backstep to retreat 5. With Zolt at no gauge, he has no ranged options to threaten from this position. This is basically exactly what Chykka needs. Advancing 5. With both players at 4 cards in hand, Chykka's under threat of being defeated in a single strike. But MiX also has very limited options for actually threatening follow-ups. Power attack. Being able to throw advantage into Zolt is kind of humorous. Given what we know about MiX's deck at this point, he still has 1 Fatal Eye available to him. That is, unfortunately, his best option against Chun-Li at this current moment in time. Now, given the cornering situation, and I believe 1 more sweep existing in Zolt's deck, he does have the ability to threaten a kill at this position. Zolt strikes with a 7-speed cross into a focus. Slowly, but surely chipping away at Chykka's life. Chykka boosting the 2nd copy of Headstomp this game. Zolt spending the rest of his deck in order to draw out the rest. His current hand is Cross Up, Wild Hunt, and Fatal Eye, along with a mystery 4th card. At this point, neither player is truly ahead in resources, unless we're counting the life totals. Harry comes out. I assume the Fatal Eye. No, the cross-up. Chun-Li choosing to not retreat afterwards. Soul preparing? Plus power comes out, giving Chun-Li a total of +2 power and +1 speed. Chun-Li is in a reasonable position to play Kikoken. I don't believe we've seen any of them hit the discard this game. Interesting that Chun-Li chooses to not retreat after boosting power. But this does mean that she can threaten most of her normals from this range. Sweep is basically guaranteed to hit at this point. And if I recall, most of Chun-Li's deck at this point is primarily her movement specials. We have seen both head stomps get played, but I don't believe that we've seen any spinning bird kicks. I also do not believe we've seen the second copy of Flipping Axe Kick, which at this point is an easy 7 power. MiX prepares, and Chykka is in a fairly safe position up until MiX chooses to advance in with his resources. We do know that MiX has a copy of Wild Hunt, so he will be able to use its boost. Question is, does establishing range 4 actually give him any real benefits? Chykka's probably attempting to determine how to capitalize off the current boosts in play. At any time, 4 force can be thrown down, and MiX can establish range 1 again. And given that we know he has Wild Hunt in hand, it's not really going to dent his resources. I'm going to assume that this is the last turn that Chykka has to actually establish any sort of advantage. Chykka debating whether to draw cards or not. Check how many cards are left in deck. Chykka spending 3 force, including a dive, just to draw an extra 2 cards. We'll see how MiX capitalizes. Ooh, interesting. Reading. MiX attempting to close the game right here. With a total of 6 damage. Heightened reflexes reading into a somewhat guaranteed sweep. If nothing else, this removes Zolt from play. This does mean that Chykka is going to be at a disadvantage for the rest of this set. They will get to determine who goes first in the second game. But for the third game, MiX is almost guaranteed to go first, if we get to that point. First player advantage isn't that huge in Exceed, but I do believe that first player does tend to win slightly more often, given relatively equal skill levels. Currently waiting for the players to set up for their next game. Going what I know off of for MiX's gameplay tendencies, he's very likely to pull out Ragna for this. Chykka, on the other hand, a little bit more difficult to make the call on. I'm going to guess Treasure Knight. Well, I was half right. Treasure Knight into Hakumen. Actually should be reasonably favorable for Treasure Knight. Treasure Knight is an interesting character in that he's not especially good at very much anything. He has some reasonable zoning tools, but the rest of his tools are incredibly limited, at least until he exceeds. Big issue with Treasure Knight is that all of his boosts cost 1 force. They tend to be reasonably good boosts, but the fact that they eat into his very limited resource economy tends to cause problems until he's exceeded. Hakumen has his own problems. Hackman has all the resources in the world at the start of the game. Unfortunately, he's very much pressured by his deck running out. He also tends to have not the greatest offensive options. The specials tend to eat into his resources without giving him huge advantages. Guren is probably one of his better attacks. Very good at calling out range 3 and 4 plays. And Zantetsu is what I consider the strongest card in his entire kit. 7 damage that ignores armor is quite advantageous. And of course, you have all of his ultras. They're good, but the cost involved for what they actually give you isn't the greatest. Akametsu is probably one of the best cards in the game, though. Shifu tends to be a very safe option. It doesn't generally do anything valuable, but the fact that it almost always hits, and the armor on it makes it at least slightly safer, makes it a reasonable option. Yukikaze is a card that can be baited, and if it's baited, it tends to be a much, much weaker option. But it does keep Hakumen alive during the last stages of the game. Already at the start of the game, and Hakumen has advanced to range 1. Not particularly sure what else has happened. I've been playing a range 1 game against Treasure Knight. And spending her engage, no less. Treasure decides he's had enough. Boost defend. Hakumen... Ooh, boosting the light, but ending up with the other sweep in his gauge. And then the light getting teched. Hakumen defends, and then Spike ends up in his gauge. Hakumen with defend probably is less dangerous than Treasure Knight with defend. This said, I'm unsure what Chykka is going to use as a follow-up. Unfortunately, Treasure's cards are a little lacking at range 1. Scuttle Slam is underwhelming. Dive Charge can be useful, but it's generally better as a call-out. Aquamine at range 1 basically defeats the purpose of using Aquamine. Let's see. Chykka boosting Secure Vault. Secure Vault is teched. Surprised this Secure Vault was not used. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a hit effect on it. I thought that was an instant effect. In this case, it makes total sense to have it teched. Chykka staring at the options that are currently in Hakumen's gauge. Parry. Parrying cross. This limits Hakumen's speed options to almost nothing at this point. Rank at a gauge. Massive boosted. Treasure Knight is in a awkward position at the moment. Hakumen can't particularly do anything of strong value unless Treasure Knight allows him to. But at the same time, Treasure doesn't have any strong options, especially with +3 armor out. Hakumen choosing to initiate. Which leads me to believe that this is likely Zantetsu. Alternatively, Sweep is incredibly powerful in this situation. The correct call in a position like this is to proudly play something that, if nothing else, avoids both of those attacks. Oh, but that's right, Sweep has been played already. This can't be Sweep. So really, best option at this point is to play something that beats Zantetsu. Because while there's quite a lot of armor being thrown around, there's not much power. The response is Anchor Launch. What the? Into Zantetsu. Interesting. Well, played something that loses to Zantetsu and lost to Zantetsu. That's 7 damage incurred. But still enough guard to trigger Anchor Launch. Losing a Zantetsu is not something you want to do against Hakumen. It's probably the #1 way that he actually wins games. Either that or playing Akamatsu. Anchor launch is used to take the opposite corner, establishing range 5. The particularly unfortunate thing here was that all of Treasure Knight's other options, despite not being that great, are still reasonable. Scuttle Slam can, at the very least, push Zantetsu out. Oh, but there was range involved for Massive. On the other hand, Dive Charge also works just fine. Treasure attempting to be a zoner, boosting Fierce at range 5. Ekman passes turn. Chykka determining what to do from this position. The correct option, of course, is just toss the EX treasure coin out. That's fun. Given that one anchor launch is down, this does limit Treasure Knight's potential follow-ups. Boosting Redistribute. Just to get Dive Charge into gauge. Ekman advances to range 3, currently at 7 gauge. Five cards left in deck. This is both a good time for Hackman to consider either exceeding or reshuffling. Having Akamatsu as an option, very dangerous. And if it does get parried, he can just immediately exceed and get it back into his deck. At range 3, Chykka does have a wide range of follow-ups. The question is if he will use any. Chykka currently attempting to determine what Hackman has left for options. If Hackman were to exceed right now, he would have the option to get both Zantetsu and Sweep back into his hand. And having Gurren ain't that bad either, I suppose. Second copy of Fierce comes down. Treasure Knight now has +4 power. Reading from Hakumen fails to connect, revealing EX Assault, Aquamine, Scuttle Slam, and Treasure Coin. EX Assault gets played on defense into Assault, doing a total of 9 damage. What's interesting to me is that the +4 power made Assault very likely to be in Treasure Knight's hand. It was interesting that Hakumen did not make the read on that. And what's funny about that is that if he did make the read on that, he still would have lost from EX Assault. Chykka spends the advantage to prepare. Parry from Hakumen. Even with half of Treasure Knight's hand being known, he still whiffs the parry, revealing a new dive and spike. Hakumen now at 8 gauge. And 3 cards remaining in deck. High Tide boosted out, giving Treasure not only much needed armor, but also an incredibly valuable push. Playing High Tide, while not exceeded, is very costly, so we'll see if Treasure can actually pay for this. Notably, throwing out the High Tide and spending the dive to pay for it means that Spike is now very much available, even at range 1. And Chykka has disconnected. So while we wait for Chykka to reconnect, I want to at least look at what Hakumen has for options. With 3 cards left in deck, he could choose to reshuffle right now and get Akametsu online. It's very rare that Hakumen has opportunities to reshuffle, but when he can leverage it, he ends up having one of the best options available to him. Humorously, Akametsu is very, very weak to High Tide. Hakumen also has the ability to leverage Zantetsu, Sweep, and honestly not a whole lot else from his gauge. Grasp is reasonable. Being able to pick up Gurren to boost Tsubaki, also reasonable. Hakumen chooses to strike. Focus into Dive Charge. Treasure will take only a mere 2 damage on this, while dealing 4 back. Chykka finally having enough gauge to exceed, and pulls Hakumen into the corner. MiX had 9 cards engaged and 2 cards left in his deck. Determining what to do. Leaves Grasp in his gauge and exceeds. And very sadly tosses the very, very old character references into the trash. Oh, old character references, we miss you. Hakumen currently exerting no pressure. He has one of the few Exceed abilities that doesn't actually do very much. Treasure choosing to retreat 4. Choosing to limit Hakumen's Exceed options. Thanks for the follow, Kimchi Turtle. Sorry that I can't speak today. Rank is spent for overdrive and returning Enma to hand. Thank you for following Petersonian. I think my follower alert sound still comes on, but I'm not sure if my follower alerts actually appear on stream. Ekman basically spending his whole hand to advance into range 1. Interesting that he would choose to gain Enma into his hand and then immediately spend it as force, instead of picking up one of his very, very good options. Ekman, I believe, had all of his ultras in his discard pile before he exceeded. So he has a very low chance of having one in hand, but a very good chance of having the other copy of Zantetsu in hand. Treasure coin boosted out for salvage operation. Ekman going for a reading with the focus that he just returned from hand with his overdrive. Unfortunately, will miss. There's a read against block. Scuttle Slam into Zantetsu. Will crush the Zantetsu. Spends focus for the force. And then triggers salvage operation. We'll see what card is returned. Checking to see if Chykka is actually searching the discard. Since that was a reading by Hackman, Treasure Knight is able to pull back literally any card, including Spike, and have zero risk of it being read, just by playing it immediately. It's obvious, but it's also Hackman. At this point, most of Hackman's options should be very well known. Returning Dive Charge. Curious Pull. Could be playing Dive Charge for Sunken Treasure. Let's see what Chykka's follow-up is. Oh, boosting Diving Suit instead. Still reasonable. It is effectively 1 force for 3 armor. Pac-Man dropping Gurren, pulls on Tetsu, and immediately boosts it to strike at range 1. Chykka attempting to reason out what the possible attack is, given that the +3 armor is extremely substantial. Pac-Man should be at about 18 cards in deck? Let's see. 14. I tried. This does mean that he will very likely have to reshuffle. Which on the one hand means he'll have Akametsu, but on the other hand, he's going to need to spend a lot of time to get the 8 gauge necessary to exceed again. Pac-Man, at this point, has very few options remaining to threaten, which means this is likely an Ultra. So basically anything will trade with it. Except for Treasure Coin. Shipu dealing 8 damage. Chykka choosing to not reduce the damage taken. It's interesting to me that Chykka keeps attempting to read crosses. Every time that he's made an attempt to read the Hackman's cross, it has severely backfired. Hackman is a defensive character, but generally speaking, if he has the resources to leverage an offense, he will spend those resources. Chykka currently playing on the back foot, as Hakumen's resources definitely are above his at the moment. Chykka opting to reshuffle. Failed parry by Hakumen, revealing Sweep, Maelstrom Chest, and Scuttle Slam added to Chykka's hand since last time. If Hakumen can make it to 8 gauge, Yukikaze being engaged gives him a significant advantage. Interesting to boost light at range 1 against Hakumen. As it turns out, Sweep is a very strong offensive tool against Hakumen. As long as his ultras aren't available to him, he can't really do much against Sweep on offense, other than attempt to trade with it. Or outright avoid it. Having Sue hits the field. Interesting that Chykka's leaving so many opportunities for MiX to build up his gauge again. Throwing out Tsubaki. Tsubaki is an extremely powerful boost, but it does require that you spend a lot of gauge to make it function. And normally this isn't an issue, as long as Hakumen's exceeded. Because at that point, Tsubaki is effectively free. Hakumen currently sitting at 5 cards in deck. He could actually get enough gauge to be able to use his reshuffle action and then immediately exceed afterwards to threaten Nakamatsu. I'm going to get up and stretch for a moment, and hopefully I won't miss anything. We're back, and it looks like not a whole lot has changed. It does look like Hakumen is attempting to leverage as much power as possible, with what I presume is going to be Akamatsu. Hakumen's deck size is currently at 3. Curious about just how much he's attempting to milk the contents of his deck. Being a more than 8 gauge doesn't really help Hakumen very much. It is possible that he's just planning on exceeding next turn. So at that point, it almost feels like his boosts are being wasted. Chykka in a very awkward situation. Using attack... Oops. If only tech could eliminate both boosts. Wait, with Tsubaki. This does make for an extremely vicious Zantetsu play. I'd say it makes a very interesting assault play, but Gage is a little bit consumed at the moment. Zantetsu at this point will hit for 10 total damage, ignoring armor. But it will set Hakumen back quite a few resources to do so. Alternatively, getting any of his ultras into hand at this point is pretty much guaranteed. Especially when dives are being spent on teching boosts rather than avoiding attacks. The strike happens. To EX Cross, of all things. Sweep takes a minimum of 4 damage. Boosted to 5. Determining exactly what to spend. It seems to be merely a play to Attempt to establish a safer range and to populate the discard pile further. As it turns out, 9 speed is a little overkill. Blackman exceeds, and Treasure passes turn. We're seeing very interesting Hockman plays from MiX. Seems to be preferring to use the cards that he pulls in order to use them as boosts. This does give Chykka ample opportunity to perform a counterattack. Sitting at 6 cards in hand versus Hockman's 3. Treasure's options aren't extremely powerful, but having more options tends to be more than enough. The threat here, of course, is to make sure to not just throw something out that loses to Zantetsu. It's unlikely that Hockman has an Ultra in hand. So most options will be safe. It's mostly a matter of just not taking a sweep to the face. Kinda wish I could see what was going on inside of Chykka's mind right now. It's interesting that he plays this passively into Hockman. It has so far been working. But giving Hockman more turns to draw what he actually wants into his hand may not be the most effective thing. Ranking a gauge to pull Shipu into hand. And then immediately spending it as force. Oh, never mind. Spent Yukikaze as force. and Shipu gets parried. One has to wonder why Hackman gets Yukikaze, but Jin doesn't. Poor Jin. Telegraphing either Zantetsu or Yukikaze. Yukikaze doesn't do great amounts of damage, but it is virtually guaranteed. This is still probably a situation where you play against the Zantetsu. It's hard for me to determine what Chykka is thinking about in any given time. Different players analyze things in very different ways. I tend to ignore smaller threats as a player. I prefer focusing more on the more threatening attacks or the mix-ups. This is very definitely a mix-up that we're looking at. On the other hand, losing to the stronger options in this mix-up is pretty much guaranteed to close the game. Yanagi. Did play against the Zantetsu, but traded down. This is still probably a far better situation than what could have happened. With Yukikaze still in hand, there aren't any particularly safe options that Treasure Knight can throw out at this moment. Salvage Operation gets teched. And the only card that we know that is in Hackman's hand is currently unusable. This puts Treasure Knight in a far safer situation than he was in previously. Enma being used as a defensive ability into Spike. One of the few cases where Enma is actually useful attack of any sort. Thanks for the follow, Twilight's Falling. So after the greedy Spike play, Chykka absolutely needs to come up with a follow-up. Otherwise, Yuki Kaze will become live. Given the life totals right now, anything that can go wrong for either of these players definitely will. Five life is enough to basically get KO'd by most things. A 10 life is begging for a mix-up to effectively end the game. Akumen, full of options. Akumen also consuming far more board space than he was before. In the current situation, Yuki Kaze is both effective being used and not used. Thanks for hosting, everyone. Thank you for the follow, Megadolan. I can't tell if that was a force expenditure or a backstep. Both achieve the same goal. It looks like from this position, Chykka is attempting to have the option to push Hackman out of range of one of his attacks. Interestingly, all of his attacks do not hit at this range to begin with. Treasure Knight still at a sizable deck. Though given that they've already reshuffled, they do need to start making some pressure plays. The curious question is how MiX makes use of the information. Knowing... Ooh, reading. Ooh, Wild Swing. Ooh, Spike. And a Spike! Woohoo! That is a play. Failed the reading. Still win the strike. Focus was red. Which makes that defensive spike very questionable. Interestingly, Yuki Kaze would have won that strike. And honestly, Yuki Kaze probably should have been played. Hey, that's true. +2 armor was in play. Still unsure about playing Spike after Focus was red, though. Focus loses to mid-speeds. Playing a mid-speed into a mid-speed is asking for trouble. It was a Wild Swing that was pulled, but with High Tide out, Spike still doesn't work against a lot of things. And the real problem here is that both players are at 5 life. And now it's Hakumen's turn. Let's look at the hand contents again. Cross and Enma and block don't really help in this position. And Tetsu doesn't help in this position. Renga's fine. Renga's really fine. No, Renga's not fine. I'm thinking of Gurren. Renga's really not fine, but it has reach, so it's fine. And it's very hard to do anything against reach Zantetsu at this point. Honestly, Reach Santetsu was really, really fine. Kinda curious if that's going to be the play. There's the Ranka. I assume the block is going to be spent on it. Oh, no. Oop. Genma was spent. Is this the Zantetsu? It's the Zantetsu. Into Anchor Launch. Into Angler Call. This is an interesting set of wild swings. Into Anchor Launch. Into Cross. That will end the game. That was a really bad set of attacks to draw. I'm unsure if there was anything in Treasure's deck that could have actually helped there. Beating this play was extremely difficult. Dive would have done it. Dive would have won the game. So there were very few options remaining that could have actually helped here. That was definitely the worst of them. Well, with that, Chykka has been eliminated from the tournament, which puts MiX into the finals. He was defeated by Calavantas last round, but he will now have the opportunity to battle him again in an attempt to take first. Given that MiX is in the loser's bracket right now, he will need to win 2 sets in order to defeat Calavantas. So hopefully next week we will see who will actually become the true King of Exceed. Or no, wait, that's at the tournament. Hold on. But with that, I do believe that is the end for us tonight. I want to thank everyone for watching, and hope you all have a great night. I'll be back in about an hour and a half to be streaming a mystery race, so that should be exciting. You're going to be watching Retro Entertainment, be sure to tune in. I'll catch you all next time.